you don't want to like overdo it. There was an interesting thing I saw. I think Gary Willis talking about it. He said all you need is just enough pressure just to like put the string down. You don't need to do more. You're not, after that, it's just you're working against it, and that's very astute.
Hi, and welcome to ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. If you've ever wanted to learn bass, but you think maybe you're too old or your body won't cooperate or some other reason like that, you should know that right now there are thousands of people inside the For Bass Players Only community. A lot of them in their 50s, 60s, 70s. I've got students in their 80s, and they are learning bass, having the time of their life playing music that they love. You should come join them and experience that incredible transformation for yourself. As I always say, you're never too old to groove. So let's play bass. My guest this week is an old friend. Marcos Varela is an accomplished bassist, composer, producer, band leader, and educator, originally from Houston, Texas. He's performed at jazz festivals all over the world and has shared the stage with an impressive list of artists, including the Charles Mingus Big Band, Jason Moran, Martha Wainwright, Kendrick Scott, Leslie Odom Jr., Roy Hargrove, and Umar bin Hassan of The Last Poets. That's going back a little bit, but he's done a his career. As composer and producer, Marcos has scored music for numerous movies and TV programs, including the film Roots in Water, directed by Domenica Cameron Scorsese. After releasing his debut solo album, San Ignacio, I remember enjoying that when it first came out, back in 2016. Wow. Marcos has been featured on notable albums such as Peter Zach's One Mind in 2018 and Andrew Moorhead's 2023 debut release, Interleaved. A master of both the upright and the electric bass, Marcos can be heard regularly all over the New York City jazz scene and is currently on the faculty both at the New School of Jazz and Contemporary Music and the Montclair State University. Our last interview with Marcos, can you believe it was all the way back in 2020 at the
Yeah.
show?
Yeah, that was a wild time. Yeah, just before the world took a break.
Yeah, we had no idea what was brewing at the time. I think people were just starting to talk about, hey, there's something going around. Be careful. So it's great
Yeah.
to see you again. Welcome back. Great to have you on the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's great to see you again.
Thank you. You too. Now, at that interview, you were talking about then new record Illumination with Rob Garcia, Noah Preminger,
Yeah.
and you were,
Yeah, that
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, that stemmed out of a collaborative band with Rob, Noah Preminger, and John O'Gallagher. No keys or chords on it. So it was, really fun project for me. I had a lot of space to improvise there and kind of be the
This is
chord
a
instrument.
wrong note, huh?
Yeah, yeah, you can't play a wrong note when that happens. You have to really be on top of your game. Playing trio. I actually played trio this past Monday with a former band leader of mine, Billy Hart, the great drummer from Washington D.C. But we did a
Tabali.
gig. Yeah, Jabali, exactly. So it was great to play with him again. It'd been a little while since we'd gotten to play, and it was fun just to play in that trio format. And there's some clips of that I think on my YouTube channel if anybody wants to check it out, which is just Marcos Varela Music, which has a lot of different formulations of me playing in different projects over the years. If you're interested in what I do and some of my music, as well as other bands I'm part of and I played in, so it's pretty gives me it kind of shows you the scope of what I do on there.
Yeah, well, that's a pretty broad scope, as we
Yeah.
already know. You were also talking about you were ready getting ready to go play at the Kosovo Jazz Festival,
Yes, that was
and
the last gig I did before the pandemic. Yeah, that was wild because, we went there. I had a band. Mostly from guys that I played with from the New York scene. A great saxophonist, Bill McHenry, who now lives in Barcelona. Darren Beckett, a great drummer that's played with the Killers, but then he's also played with Lee Konitz. He has a really, wide scope of things he does. He lives in Brighton, England. And then my friend Leo Genovese, a really wonderful pianist who worked with Esperanza Spalding and Wayne Shorter and Jack DeJohnette over the years, Joe Lovano. He's an incredible musician as well. So that was a really fun concert, but it was literally the last concert I did before the pandemic. And on the flights back, everything was starting to shut down. I remember taking the flight from Pristina to Vienna, Vienna to, London. And that flight back from London was a huge airliner, but pretty much everyone had canceled their ticket. And so it was like maybe 10 people on like a huge, one of those huge, 727s or whatever it was. Yeah, so that was the kind of the beginning of the surreal times. Yeah, and then I want to say there was couple years there where it was touch and go. I feel like there were, but things were pretty much shut down. I had some family stuff I had to take care of back in Houston, so I was, helping my parents out in that period. And basically, I want to say around mid 2021, I was back more or less in New York and started gigging again. We had some makeup dates with, Ingrid Jensen's band, which was really fun, and just a bunch of different things were happening. I felt like New York was back in full throttle up until December, and then I had a bunch of European makeup dates with my band where we played in Bilbao and Almeria, Spain, and Valencia, Spain. So we were doing those makeup dates, and then by the time we got to Madrid, Omicron had hit. So that variation had shut down the end of that tour. So then there was another maybe 3 or 4 months of uncertainty until maybe about March of 2022. And then I feel like since March of 2022, that was a super busy year, more locally in New York, and and since then nationally too. I did a tour with Eddie Henderson's band, the great trumpeter for with Herbie Hancock in the '70s, his Wadishi project, and so that was really fun. I led a tour of my own that was really nice. So it's been an interesting few years. A lot of shifts, a lot of changes. I started teaching at the New School, as you mentioned. I teach the Herbie Hancock Ensemble there, and then I have private students that I teach at Montclair State here in the you know I guess tri-state area, you could call it. So
Just on
yeah,
a tangent here, when you say the Herbie Hancock Ensemble, I mean,
yeah.
like 1964 or like
You
1976,
know,
or is it?
we cover, yeah, we cover a broad scope of his works. The new school students are pretty high level for the most part. So, and it's an auditioned ensemble, so they have to audition. Actually, I'll have auditions this Monday for this semester. And I usually audition them on some more of his common pieces like Dolphin Dance and Watermelon Man or Cantaloupe Island, those piece kind of songs. But then when we dive into the actual material, I try to do some of his '60s work. I want to do like some Wadishi stuff. We do toys. We do you know all Alone from I think Taken Off we've done. So some of his early, and then all into the '70s we do actual proof. I like try to get a bass player that can double and also play electric. So for his electric period, actual proof is a pretty common one we like to do. Tell Me a Bedtime Story we've done. Eye of the Hurricane. Yeah, so I don't try to do too many of his just most famous pieces. It's a little more going into the jazz pedagogy and a little bit like some deep cuts.
Yeah, well, Eye of the Hurricane, that's got to be pretty challenging for but
Yeah, it has the polyrhythmic aspect. Yeah, no, that one is. They do they like, but they can handle it. These students are strong. I've had some really great students, really nice young trumpet player Cal Ferrardi, who's now playing in Christian McBride's big band, and then there's a really was a nice young drummer Gary Fisher, who's doing some nice things in the scene now. So it's really exciting to see my students already kind of out there and making waves, and so it just I feel like from now that I'm kind of, I guess, older in the scene, I'm not a newbie anymore. It's kind of funny to say, I feel like I'm always still learning this music. You never stop learning your whole life. So, but I feel like I do have the knowledge from working with a lot of elders when I did move to town, whether it was Charlie Persip or studying with Ron Carter or Billy Hart, Eddie, all these guys that I have an answer to a lot of their questions. If they have a specific question, I'm like, well, X, Y, and Z told me this about that, or X, Y, and Z told me this. So I think my teaching side is blossoming, and I really enjoy it, along with leading and also playing as a sideman. They all kind of feed each other.
I'm just trying to imagine being of college age and auditioning for the Herbie Hancock Ensemble and
Hmm.
happen to be a piano player. Is that a hot seat more than some of the others, or is it just everybody else?
I think so. Herbie's music is so broad that you do need to find someone. I mean, all the players kind of need to know how to be versatile, but you know, uh, I would say all the players need to have some ability to play a funk beat, to understand that kind of rhythm, or to understand swing. I mean, Herbie's scope of music is so broad. And he's so masterful at all of them. It can be challenging, the material. And then you're dealing, not only are you dealing rhythmically with the hard language, harmonically he's so innovative as well. His music is it's incredible. So I mean, I think he's one of the living legends that we have out there, and definitely it's important to have his music studied because it falls from hard bop and bebop all the way to funk, and yeah, there's just in odd times, so many things that we deal with in a modern concept today. So yeah, I think it's tricky. It's a tricky ensemble to be in. You definitely have to have kind of a broad scope, or at least a basic understanding of these styles before being able to be in it.
I saw him last. Well, obviously before COVID. I think it was like the summer of 2019
Mm.
at an outdoor amphitheater on the Detroit River, which
Oh,
used to be
nice.
called Shane Park. Now it's the Aretha Franklin. It's affectionately known simply as the Aretha, which
Mhm.
is fine with me. But I was hanging out. I was interviewing James Genus, who was
Oh,
touring.
great. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was so cool because we got to have dinner with him and Vinnie Colaiuta and Herbie was there telling stories about playing with Miles, and it was, oh man, it was just incredible. And
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Washington, Kasami Washington, is that his name?
Oh, yeah, yeah. He's from LA. Yeah.
He was
It's
the
based on
other
his
act.
name. Yeah, Kamasi, Washington. Yeah, yeah.
Mossy. Oh, and his bass player. Oh my God, Miles. He was like a
Oh yeah, Miles. He's from LA too. And Tony, I want to say, is it Tony Davis on drums, or I can't remember who's on drums. But yeah, no, that's a great band. They sound wonderful. So they were the other band playing.
yeah, and he's just Miles. I interviewed him. I saw him also at the Detroit Jazz Festival another year. But what's his name? I have to. He's got a band out in LA with a really fun name, but I can't remember the name of the band. Hey, I'll do one more quick Herbie story. When my wife and I were in Italy, and this was
Mm,
about 8 years ago, and we were out, I think it was like a Sunday morning or something. It was a beautiful day, and there was something going on. We happened to be in Rome that day, I think. And there
nice.
was a marching band going down the street. Okay, well, let's see what kind of music they play in Italy here, the kids, the marching band. And they played Watermelon Man.
Nice,
That's what
nice.
they were playing. Let's
Is
get
That's what I'm saying? Is music's universal. I think it's worth studying. It just spans so many different genres that, I think we all strive. Those guys are, musical luminaries, whether it was Wayne Shorter or Herbie, and I feel, that yeah, that kind of music is it just never dies.
yeah. Okay, it's been, as we said, about 4 years, and I understand
Hmm.
you've got some pretty cool news to share. Go ahead and
Hmm.
toot your horn here. I know there was
No,
something about a grant, or it was
yeah,
still a
yeah. So I guess that's been professionally some of the biggest news I've had is I was the awardee of a Creative Capital Award, which is check it out online if you're interested. But it's a really cool kind of a top 10 grant, similar to like a MacArthur or some of these other Guggenheim Award, some of these other ones, and they fund basically creatives and in pursuit of a certain type of project that they may want to do. And so I was awarded one for a project that I'm currently going to tour this fall, and we'll record early next year. And it's a project that infuses my native history, which is I'm half Mexican, and with jazz because both of them have come from an Afro, what kind of West African background is these rhythms from both of the music. So I felt like, well, how can I, make jazz still, which I've grown up studying and have been, feel like I'm a jazz trained musician, a classical son too, with my heritage. So this was kind of a natural fusion, and I've started writing the music that has different aspects for different civil rights leaders within the Mexican heritage, and then I'm also mixing it with just jazz improvisation. So we're using some traditional instruments, and then we're also putting like jazz quartet to it. So it's pretty cool. And then we're also putting jazz formulations of traditional songs that I grew up with. So it's going to have a bunch of aspects. I want to incorporate a multimedia aspect to it as well, which will be a visual. And in the fall, we're touring the Southwest, which are all kind of former Hispanic lands. They were all part of, Nuevo España at one point, and then became part of, Mexico for a little bit. And then, until the U.S. There was in the mid 1800s, they moved over to the U.S. So that's going to be really fun. That's going to be the American portion of the tour, which will include California, Arizona, Colorado, Texas, and then I'm going to be doing a performance next April in Mexico City for it as well. So I'm expanding it to actual Mexican nationals too. So it's exciting. It's a pretty cool project that I'm leading,
You've been
and
thinking about this for been giving this a lot of thought, obviously.
yeah, yeah.
Are you putting together a special band for this project?
Yeah, I'm gonna have some traditional instruments which are used. It'll be some accordion in there, some trombone for the recording for this tour, upcoming tour. It'll stay just quartet while we kind of like build the music. We're workshopping the music on this tour, but we're also going to be playing some of my older material. It's going to be really fun. But we're playing at the Care Center in Arizona. We're playing at Sam First in LA. We're playing in Portland. Actually, oh yeah, we're playing in Oregon too. We're playing in Portland at Jack London, Mr. Tipples in San Francisco, and then doing a really cool kind of run at Jazz Texas San Antonio. We're playing at Parker's Jazz in Austin and Scat Lounge in Fort Worth, and then also Houston at Houston Piano Company. So it's going to be neat. It's going to be kind of a broad scope of different places, and then one of the concerts will also be in my family's native San Ignacio, which my first record was named after, which kind of pulls the whole thing back around.
One
So
thing I remember about your last interview, I haven't thought about this until now, but you have an uncanny ability to store a seemingly unlimited amount of information in your head.
I guess, yeah, I do have a little bit of a Wikipedia kind of mind. It's like you press a button and then I'm like, "Eh." I do enjoy, yeah, I do enjoy history, and I find that it all, connects. I think that's a big passion of mine, is knowing the history of anything, but especially if it's your profession and your music and your passion and your art form, it's even more important. And then now connecting that to this heritage project is a real big deal for me, and it's in honor of my father too. I sadly lost him during the pandemic, kind of just coming right out of it. So this is kind of a project that's dedicated to him and his memory.
No, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
Congratulations, that's quite a feat. And well
thank you.
deserved. Let's talk a little bit about your bass gear. We were
Yeah.
we were sitting at the NS Design booth at the
Mm,
probably last couple of interviews. So
yeah.
why don't we start there?
Yeah. Love NS, I'm still with them, Lori and Ned and everybody over there just a wonderful job, and they've just
Corey,
been so, what's up?
don't forget Corey. Hey, Corey.
Corey, yes, exactly. Corey. Sorry, that was Corey and Lori. I confused their names. They're just too similar. Yes, of course, Corey. Corey's been a big champion of everything I do, and I owe it all to them. I love. I still use that bass all the time. I still have my CR5. It's basically my main go-to, especially for travel and road work. I was using it a lot with a trumpet player recently, Dominic Farinacci, based out of Cleveland and New York. He was, one of Witten's proteges, but he's had some great projects that Tommy LaPuma has produced, and he had a really neat project I was doing called Modern Warrior. and it was just such a great instrument for that tour because I needed something that really cut and but still had body, and I just felt like that was the only that's my main electric for something when I need that. It's just there's a lot of versatility. The EMGs give it a very special sound, and in difference to my other instruments, which tend to I will put. I'm also an Aguilar artist, so I do have my Aguilar ceramics and some of my other basses, and those are wonderful. They're more warm, but it just they don't work for certain kind of things, and so the EMGs really kick in that instrument. And yeah, I love my CR5, and they're actually coming out with a new one that I played at this last. It's a carbon fiber instrument that I played at this last NAMM. It was my first NAMM back this past year, and it was really cool. It was beautiful instrument, very light and six string. It just it was just very neat. So I might have to talk to them about one of those too. And I
Well,
would tell everyone to check it out.
it was my first name back too. It seems to me they were passing around a new prototype of something. Is that the
Yeah,
one?
that's the one I was just describing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's that it was a six string carbon fiber instrument. Very, very cool. So I just think that, Ned continues to innovate. Even, he's one of the first to do it, and he just continues to keep rocking it. So kudos to Ned and all his hard work, and Corey and Lori and everyone that does Corey and Lori and does a wonderful job over there. So just real happy to be with them, and and all of their support.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, I also connected with Diodario this past NAMM, and I'm an artist with him as well. So I'm loving their products too. There's kind of got introduced to them a little bit through Ned's stuff, because he would always have it strung with those strings. But yeah, I love them. So just so many great products out there.
How about your upright playing, your upright bass?
Yeah, I have a couple basses. I don't have like a endorsement for an upright bass per se, because most of us tend to like older instruments, but I have a Jusic that's my main bass from 1962, so it's a little bit later. I love that bass. I use the Fishman full circle, thanks to Chris De Maria over there. He does a wonderful job
Mhm.
with all of us artists. And I love that instrument. I just think that it's kind of my go-to. It's very, very warm, very yeah, just it's been my kind of go-to. And I think because some of my favorite bass players played Juzics, Ron Carter and Christian McBride, they always had Juzics, and there's something about them that speaks to me. They were the note comes out quickly, but it's very round and full, and you could hear it really well next to you, which I think is important for me. And then I also have another bass that I picked up during the pandemic from a luthier friend of mine, just an old K from the late 40s that I love. And I love having a plywood in the arsenal just because it's a very specific sound. I liken them to if you compare it to wine. I feel that the Juzics tend to have a lot of overtones, a lot of richness, that you won't necessarily get on a K base, but the K has just this beautiful sound, like if you have a good table wine with dinner or something. It's just does the job really well, and it's just very loud. It projects really well. I don't need an amplifier if I'm doing a smaller gig. It's just they're just classic workhorse instruments, and just they're both really fun to play. Sometimes I have a hard time choosing which one to take out of the house. And then I also do have an old Chinese Christopher bass that I converted into a travel instrument that I use. Largely, I keep it down in Houston because I'm part of a big band down there that the great trombonist Vincent Gardner runs. It's called Jazz Houston,
I'm
and we
sorry,
do.
I need to jump in here.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you convert a bass into a track? I can't let that go. How do you? Was it like a Charlie
So
Quick? You know those that fold in half.
yeah, they do have folding one. There was a guy in Tennessee that was making those for
Yeah,
a minute.
Charlie Chadwick.
Yes, yes. I feel like Eric Revis had one for a minute. I never really got to play one. The one I had was just neck removable. So they put in like a screw. It was a guy I think who invented the process in Toronto, and then everyone kind of started catching on. I know Rufus Reed has his bass converted that way. I'm trying to remember who else at the moment, but yeah, it just allows ease of travel. You just take the neck on the plane with you, and then you can put it under so there's less fees or issues with that. I do find
The
what's
strings,
that?
though. The strings, doesn't that?
Yeah, they have a little end pin that is held in place, and then it comes down, and it takes about 15 minutes or so to reset up. But you know, it's
Strings like a double ball end or something like that, or
no, no, it's just yeah, you just kind of put it with the neck, and then you kind of put it over, and then the bridge, and then you pull it out, and it's kind of hard to describe, but there's YouTube videos that will show you how to kind of tear down and put it back together. Everybody has a little slightly different system. Mine has a thing at the top that holds the strings in place so that you don't have to worry about them flipping and flopping around.
what are you using D'Addario's on the uprights also?
Yeah, I do. I mean, the Zyx is the one I've been using, and I love them. I like hybrid strings. I like strings that are like synthetic core, kind of have an older kind of feel to them. Yeah, those tend to be before, I was with the D'Addario ones. There's been other ones I've dealt with. I was using some Colsteins for a while, but they changed manufacturing during the pandemic, so those kind of had that feel as well. But yeah, I like synthetic core strings. I tend to be more into those. I'm not really a steel core type of player, and but I can't go all the way gut either. Gut tends to be a little temperamental, especially with the weather changes in New York. It's so vast, whether it gets cold and hot, and also you lose kind of a point to the sound. So I just like a
Oh,
little bit somewhere in the middle.
I didn't know that about the gut strings. Hey, back to NS Design for a minute. They make some very beautiful upright basses too. Have you tried those as well?
a little bit. They haven't totally suited my needs. They work really well, and like if I was doing more of like a kind of a pop gig or something where it's like something in between. Hopefully, I've kind of thought about them, talking to we've had few chats, but I've talked to Ned a little bit about maybe workshopping an idea of something that could be a little more for jazz music. But yeah, I think that the pure stick right now at the point, it makes it a little bit hard for the artists that I work with for them to get too connected to that sound. It could work, I think, in like probably like a Latin jazz situation would be really perfect. Almost kind of imitates a baby bass, so that can kind of work. I think that they work nicely in that. But yeah, like if you're playing like a really big kind of almost stadium level venue, it's great because there's no feedback, and you still get that aesthetic of an upright, but without the dealings of what comes with that. But a lot of my venues tend to be not super huge, and the music I tend to play tends to lean towards basically they want more acoustic sounding instruments on the stage. So it's whatever the band calls for and the employer calls for at the end of the day.
Well, you're a smart man for adhering to that. Hey, I want to ask you, we touched on this a little bit last time, but I want to get a little more specific. I want to talk to you about you're a bass player, you're also an educator, and
Hmm.
Players Only, as you know, is a bass instruction site.
Yes.
And the people that I've been attracting are in their mostly 50s, 60s, 70s. I've got students in their 80s now, both men and
Hmm.
so they're not setting out to make a career out of music. They're not looking to tour the world playing sold out arenas to their adoring fans. They want to play some classic rock riffs. They want to play some
Hmm.
blues shuffles. They want to play some walking bass, maybe funk R&B. Some of them are into slapping. And some of the things that happen to us when we get into our 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, sometimes like arthritis and tendonitis, or, a couple people have been recovering from surgery. And I'm telling you all this just to give you a context, because, like I said, I want to get a little bit more specific about what I ask you. Now that you have a better feel for the clientele that we're attracting,
Mm.
what advice can you impart to somebody like that who wants to learn to play bass? What kind of goals should they have? What should they be thinking about? What kind of questions should they be asking? Jump in any.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing, now that I've been playing almost 25 years, I've noticed, like I didn't have any aches and pains, but now you start to get older and, you get some back stuff. And I've had, and I've I remember I saw an interview, I think you did with Bob Hurst, right, talking about he had some flexor kind of things happening that he had to address. So it's important to talk about. I feel like it kind of gets maybe swept under the rug a little bit. Just because you don't want people to be concerned. Oh, will they be healthy for the gig, right? There's a little bit of this kind of feeling. But I think a lot of it is weirdly enough. I got into I think I was watching that documentary about Tom Brady and how he talked about he was faster and better as he got older because of pliability, and stretching, making sure you stay stretch and a healthy diet, things like this. You really have to be conscientious, and then practicing with good technique. On top of it all the instrument, our bodies are all slightly a little different. So you kind of have to make that adjustment, but making sure you're at least for me, like when I play upright, I'm engaging kind of from my core. I do Pilates, making sure that I'm kind of feeling from there and not trying, like, there is a certain amount of stress that will be in my shoulders or that will be in the hands from playing, but you don't want to like overdo it. There was an interesting thing I saw. I think Gary Willis talking about it. He said all you need is just enough pressure just to like put the string down. You don't need to do more. You're not, after that, it's just you're working against it, and that's very astute. Ron Carter, the same way, they say the same thing, just, you don't need to over pull the instrument, you don't need to hit me, just get a nice round tone and consistent, and you can do that with the metronome. You can just do open string exercises, just playing, EADG and different permutations. With upright, Ron would have me play into the corner. And just so I hear my sound, hear the consistency of the attack, making sure everything is very even, controlled and even, and if you start there, and then make sure, just be conscientious of your body, because once you start playing, sometimes, a little bit of that will slip, because you're in the moment, you're energetic, and you just want to try to stay. If you can stay as controlled as possible, you're just going to have less body problems, and if you already have some of these things, like you can combat it with diet and working out, making sure you stretch, making sure, you warm up before you play. It's just like we're like little athletes, of our hands. And I think that was a big thing for me too. I played a lot of sports when I was younger, and understanding that these are like little muscles, like when I was playing baseball or running or like dealing with and people don't equate those things, and a lot of the times people that play music might not have necessarily played sports, so they do get kind of more concerned when injuries start happening, but it's really just a matter of how do you mitigate those feelings and those injuries. So I think it's all. I mean, Ray Brown played till he was in his late 70s. Pablo Casals. All these guys have been playing these instruments to very, very old, and I'm sure, you talk to them. They had physical problems after some time, but you have to work on it. I know Mr. Carter had to have surgery for his back. A year or so ago, he had to take some time off. So, everyone, will deal with something at some point, but I think that it's just a matter of keeping that mental strength and then knowing how you can limit any of these pains or problems.
It's golden. I have three thoughts now on what you said. First of all, I was just referring to something just today, as a matter of fact. I interviewed Neil Jason a few years ago at a NAMM show. And he said just what you said. He says, I think of my fingers and thumbs as 10 little athletes. That's what
Yeah.
you used. And he says, I like to keep those in shape. Um, Gary Willis has always been known for having a really light touch, and
Hmm.
you were just talking about that a minute ago. I think there's a balance there too, because I remember when I got down to Miami and oh hey, there's a new upright player. What's your name? John. Okay, so I'm playing and they were like drilling it into me. Come on, man, tear those strings, pull those strings off there. Come on,
Yeah.
be more aggressive, play really hard. And then even in Detroit, we're playing like I don't know, a tune called Bones for Bassies. I don't know what it was in the big band. And the
Yeah.
band director go, no, you got to really dig in, really dig in. And if I
Yeah.
was playing too light, that wasn't good. If I was playing too, at one time when I was playing with the Fifth Dimension actually, and we were playing
Mm.
Broadway show, Ain't Misbehaving.
Oh,
And
nice.
this was when I was in Miami, and we're up in a the theater was in a big hotel on Miami Beach,
Mm.
and they put us up for the rehearsal on the top floor somewhere, and they happened to be doing some construction, and we just pulled in the room. There was no electricity in the room, So I'm doing the rehearsal on the upright with no amp because I
Mm.
plug in. There was no, and I had blisters on there. Now, okay, let's go do a 5 week show with these fingers. But what I'm getting at is, yeah, a light touch sometimes is really nice. Sometimes, really having to dig in is called for. But I think most of the time it's somewhere in between. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, there is. I mean, I think this is a study in and of itself is checking out people on any instrument. But if you notice, like when you watch like the technical masters that still get a great big sound, I feel that it's a combination. Like you see McCoy, and he's kind of using the weight of his body, to hit those keys to get that sound. It's not like he's like straining. He's not going to strain to get that. And Coltrane very close, to the keys when he's moving, and masterful bassist Christian McBride very relaxed, but he gets a great big sound, and he's can play with facility, but he's still getting a big sound. But all of that, is learning how to play relaxed, and so you can still get that sound. Bob Hurst, perfect example too. I don't get the sense he's ever straining on the instrument, or like, it's a matter of like, get a controlled sound. That was one thing Antoine Roney said to me. He's like, don't overplay it, because at a certain point, and Ron Carter would talk about this, it's a box. You can't, it's not going to get any louder. It actually starts squashing the sound. So yeah, I think there is a middle ground, but if you play with a controlled, like even sound, that'll cut through anything else, than just like trying to like harness this big sound. And then you experiment with height of the strings depending on tension. I tend to like strings that are a little lighter tension for my Juzic, because that just sounds better on it. You want to find the right string and bass pairing. Like I think not every bass sounds the best with any string. I think you need to find the right, then there's a lot that Diodario makes that you could use. You could use their hybrid, you could use their, orchestra, you can use their Zyx, for different feels that will, kind of create. And you want to find that, like, it's like a marriage, right, between the bass. So whatever gets speaking the bass the most there, and then you start kind of dealing with your hands. Yeah, I think there is a middle ground for sure, but I still think, you don't want to over dig in unless it's a musical choice, maybe for a few, bars or something. But if you do that a whole gig or for your whole life, at a certain point you'll start having problems, and then you can't play forever, and that's no good for anyone. Yeah.
I do actually advise my students to go toward the lighter side, and that's mostly
Yeah.
because a lot of them think you need to be a bodybuilder or you need to have superhuman strength to play the bass or you have to play the line just like on the record. I said, no, you'd be blown away, and they are blown away by how
Mm,
great they can make the music feel just by laying down a super simple bass line. You need a certain amount of assertiveness, aggressiveness, even,
of
but
course.
you don't have to, go crazy. I did another interview, actually a couple times with. Do you know who Randy Kurtz is? Dr.
I don't
Randy.
know Randy. No.
He uh, he is a chiropractor, an
Mm.
acupuncturist,
Oh, nice.
and a bass player.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he worked with Megadeth. He worked with, and he was telling me that, like you said before, we're not all built exactly the same. And he mentioned Christian McBride and he
Mm.
mentioned Victor Wooten, that, there's traditional technique that we all, I'm in upright mode, traditional technique that we all
Hmm.
learn. But sometimes you have to just tweak your hand a little bit because of the way your arm is made,
Yeah.
so the way your
Yeah.
fingers move, and you have to do that a little bit, and that's okay. No two people play exactly the same. And the other thing I wanted to ask you, and just Ron Carter had you stand in the corner and play, I wanted to say it wasn't because you were bad, was it?
No, it's part of, kind of knowing to be able to hear yourself clearly. It kind of gives you a microphone back of what exactly you're doing.
Yes, I was joking.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You're
yeah.
feeling guilty about something and you feel the need to.
Well, he'll set you straight. He's definitely he's on all those records for a reason, that's for sure.
Yeah, I was just talking. I had another interview before this one. I was talking about Ron. I interviewed him a long time ago, but I interviewed him more recently, like 1 year ago.
I think I saw that, yeah.
I was talking about, now, okay, now we have to play the root on the downbeat of the chord, but after that, how do you do so much without getting in trouble or something like that? And he says, whoa, 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 John, 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 John. He says, "You want to talk about roots? You want to talk about roots? There's a farmer's market about 2 blocks from where I live.
Mm,
Me and we'll go down there and I'll show you some roots." And he's going on. And I'm saying, yes, I understand that, but there's an expectation. The other people in the band, even the audience, whether they realize it or not, they're expecting to hear the root. And he says, no, no. If I have an F chord, well, I have to play an F. I might want to play an A and then a B. I was like, ooh, a B on an F chord. Okay. And then a
mhm.
C. And he said, Miles trusted my judgment, and I'm trying to build something here, and I'm trying to work with the drummer and the piano player and everything else. It was a fascinating interview. Ron Carter just put it in the search thing and look for that 2023 interview.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm glad he's really been putting out a lot of cool, educational material that I think is invaluable for I give it to my students too, because he really has, he took the instrument, and I feel like so many of those guys, whether it was, James Jamerson or Chuck Rainey or any of those guys, they were coming back to him for understanding a lot of those note choices, and he really understands harmony on such a heavy level that he can kind of make, I mean, you're playing with Herbie Hancock every day, and then you're working with Miles. So, I mean, you have one of the greatest piano players there, and then one of the greatest bass players just kind of experimenting in the lab. Like, let's see how we can make this work. I remember him telling me about I think it's out there, it's common knowledge now, but the Plug Nickel sessions, I think it was a club in Chicago, and he said, the idea was we're going to play, but let's play the opposite of our intuitions. So the whole record is the whole rhythm section. Miles didn't know this, and we're going to play the opposite of what we would usually play. And you have some of the most interesting music that band created. It's just they're playing, and especially I think that Stella by Starlight, Ron is picking some super interesting notes. That's just like a study in and of itself. Just in harmony and ways you can interchange chords, and how bass notes can really work, because we really just have so much power depending on what we choose. And if you know what those notes mean, then you can voice lead, you can kind of create tunes outside of tunes, and we because we just have so much more than just laying down the root too. I understand what he's saying, and that's totally Ron. But I mean, certain gigs they want the root, and that's what you give them. If I'm playing, a simple blues gig or a pop gig, they may not want to hear an inversion. And if they're a little hip and they're jazzy, they got a little bit of that jazz in them, or they're a church player, sometimes they do want to hear it. So it really just depends.
yeah, no, I get it. I totally get it, and it's balancing a lot of different things. It's funny what here's what everybody's doing or what everybody expects, do the opposite. And you can equate that. They say that about business. They say that about the stock market. When everybody's
Yeah,
trying to sell, when everybody's selling, buy. If everybody's doing this, do that. So I don't know if there's a parallel there or not, but I think
could be. Yeah,
had a
yeah.
different motivation, I think. Well, you told me about some very, very exciting stuff you have coming up in the future with the record and the tour and all the places that you're traveling and some of the other things.
Mhm.
Is there anything else about the future that you either know of or that you always wanted to do and haven't gotten around to yet?
I mean, kind of the same, I mean, I'm glad that I've kind of delved into the educational side. I think that's been really exciting for me. I have some tours coming up next year in Europe that I'm really excited about. Obviously Mexico, which I mentioned before. This recording project, which will be exciting. I'm also going to take my band back out to the West Coast. I did a residency at a place called Black Hat in San Francisco, and then a place called Keys out there the year before. So I'm going to do another one of those coming up too, which will be nice. It's a 4-day residency, and those are always fun because you really get to play with the same band and really workshop the music. So yeah, I mean, I would say that those are kind of the big exciting things for me. I'm stepping more into a band leader role, but still maintaining my side band stuff. I play with Vincent Gardner's Jazz Houston, and that's always a really fun project. We're doing a thing in December with the New Orleans Jazz Orchestra, Adonis Roses. We're doing a two jazz, like I think like a Battle of the Jazz Orchestra kind of thing, and it'll be a Christmas show as well. So that's going to be really neat. December 6th and 7th in Houston, and we did something with them at the Kennedy Center for Ellington's. I did something with them at the Kennedy Center for Ellington's 125th, I guess, birthday it was, which was really neat. We did an all Ellington set with dancers, swing dancers. So check that
Oh.
out online at the Kennedy Center if you want.
My
That's on
wife and I
YouTube.
were out somewhere. We went to dinner, and that very day was Duke Ellington's 100th birthday. That was 25 years ago.
I guess so. Wow, wow, that must have been wow. Yeah, I guess it's 125 now. And then we did that same band. We did a cool show at the end of May for Styx Hooper, who's the last living Jazz Crusader. So that
Oh,
was cool. He came and played a few tunes, and we did a whole Jazz Crusader set.
last one,
Straight.
yeah, no sample and Wilton
Yeah,
Felder, and yeah, wow.
Wilton Felder, who is a great bass player as
That's
well.
the
From
Michael.
Houston, from my hometown.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's the Michael Jackson. I want you back. Ba-doom,
Yes.
ba-doom, ba-doom.
I love that he's just like that was like his kind of day gig. I mean, he really wanted to just play jazz saxophone, but he's like, well, I'll make some money and play some bass, and he's a killer bass player.
That's the
And
opposite of how most people come to play the bass. Most bass players wanted to be guitar players.
yeah,
Oh,
that's true.
no.
Yeah, I remember when
Oh,
I
we got
started.
plenty of guitar players. You can play bass. What's a bass? Here. Or,
Yeah,
or the orchestra teacher.
my dad took me to get a guitar, and that's what happened. And saw the bass, and I was like, oh man, that's that four string thing. And I remember thinking, oh man, I remember Flea playing this. He was so cool. I love the way he would play. So I picked up bass and played along with my dad's Beatles and Stones records, and that's kind of how I got started, because those were all just great songs and easy to pick up by ear at that point, and eventually led to more. But yeah, it's just interesting. Yeah, the bass. I love the bass. I love the power it has. Being that the fulcrum between the rhythm and you're a rhythm instrument, but you're also a harmony instrument. There's just a lot of we just have a lot of power. We're kind of we're the wheels on the bus, so to speak. If there's a bus, we're the wheels on it.
It's funny, your dad with his Beatles and Stones records. My dad was into June Christie and Doris Day and the Four
Oh,
Fresh.
cool. Yeah, I love Doris Day. Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, my mom's side, that was kind of the music they were. She had a lot of jazz because her parents are Italian, and they love Frank and Durante and all those, all those classic American songbook tunes. So, I had jazz in my ear growing up, but I didn't know you could like really play it, because we didn't know anybody that necessarily played it until I got older. And I was like, and then I remember seeing I think it was my mom's good friend's son. He was going to the arts high school in Houston, and he's like, "Oh, you got to come out and see this guy Joshua Redmond. He's a jazz saxophonist." And I was like, "Whoa!" And then that's when and he was Bob Hurst on bass. Actually, he was Bob Hurst, Greg
Uh-huh.
Hutchinson, and I want to say Aaron Goldberg, and they played at this little venue in Houston, and I was just like blown away. I was like, "Man, is that what jazz sounds like?" Because you hear jazz, but then when you hear it on that level with that level of guys, I was like, wow, okay. And then
Did you do a
slowly,
little
but
research into who Joshua's father was?
oh, of course, yeah, Dewey, yeah. Well, he used to come in like at the end of his life. There's a club in Brooklyn that he used to come into sometimes. So I did get to meet him one time, and he's from Texas. He's from Fort Worth. He and Ornette are from the same area. And I love Dewey Redman, all those, 70s records and, the stuff with Ornette. I was always a huge fan of the stuff with Keith. Yeah, I was always, I loved his approach, and then Joshua's great too. So it's interesting. They're very different style players, but both great in their own right. And yeah, so that was really, really cool. I love all those connections.
Yeah, well, it was cool
And you're
because
from a great jazz town. I mean, there's so many prolific artists from Detroit. I mean, talk about one of the great places to be for music.
Ron Carter and Paul Chambers, to name a couple.
Yeah, Doug Watkins,
Yep.
all the Jones brothers, that Elvin, Hank, I mean, yeah, the list is like endless for you guys. And then still today, I mean, there's a wonderful tenor player that's teaching at UT now, Diego Rivera, who I know is from
Oh, is
from
that where he went? He was at Michigan
yeah,
State.
He left. He took the head position at University of Texas. So we've been playing a little bit down there when I've been back down the region. Yeah, no, he decided to take over that program. But no, he was at Michigan State. But yeah, I mean Rodney Whitaker I was a huge
Yeah,
fan of his
yeah,
coming up. But there's just there's and then the clubs in Detroit. Cliff Bell's is great. Your
yeah.
festival is one of the best. It's like and it's free.
Coming up,
So people
coming
can.
up too. It's coming up Labor Day
Yeah,
weekend.
it's such a cool, yeah.
You know what
It's
that
just a
used to
great.
be? You know what that festival used to be called?
What was it called back in the day?
The Montreux Detroit Jazz Festival.
Oh, interesting. Why was it called Montreux?
Switzerland, and it was inspired by
Oh,
that.
Montreux. So it was connected to that one. Oh, I didn't
It
realize
wasn't
that.
connected. I think it was just inspired. And after a few years, people were
Oh.
saying, why do we have to call it Montreux? It's the Detroit Jazz Festival. Shut up.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I mean, Detroit has such a heavy jazz history in its own right that it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
you don't need to put Montreux on there to sell it. Detroit in and of itself is important. Yeah, there's so many great
Oh, we didn't mention
players.
James Jamerson.
Oh, of course, yeah. Who is also a great jazz upright player, I mean,
Yeah.
I find I was talking to someone about that recently. If you really dissect his lines, to me, they really look like Paul Chambers solos, like if you really see like how he uses chromatics and how he uses arpeggiation, it's very kind of bebop bass influenced. And I'm like, oh, wow, and like dealing with the way he plays those triads I didn't notice that because I played electric first, so I got that Jamerson book and it was largely a sight reading exercise for me. And once I started really dissecting his lines, his note choices, I'm like, wow, this guy was a jazz musician, man, just playing some pop.
You know who Ralph Armstrong is?
Oh, Ralphie, yeah, yeah. I knew I don't know him. We've never gotten to meet each other, but we've know people from similar circles. I know Ron is knows him, and then there was back in the day. I got to do some gigs with Jerry Allen, so I know that Jerry and him were old friends, and Jerry went to Cas Tech as well. I don't know if he did, but I know she's
Yeah,
from.
yeah, he did. I'm pretty sure he did, and I think he was pretty proud to have sent his kids there too. Kenny Burrell, that's another one from Detroit, because
That's true. Kenny Burrell, also John DeLorean, right? Didn't he go to Cast?
that's I didn't know that.
I'm pretty sure he did. Yeah, I mean it's kind of why. Yeah, my dad was a huge car person. Like he was one of those guys that could like, oh, oh, what's that Mustang? Oh, no, that's a 65 and a half because the rims are this, or that has the. And I'm like, Dad, that's too much. Like way too much about a car.
I grew
So,
up in Detroit, and I used to go to a lot of business meetings, and I'd sit next to somebody, and what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And they would always say, "Oh, we do plastic injection molding." It's like, what the hell is that? And like everybody does that. There were so many people who do plastic injection
I
molding.
mean, they employed that whole town. It's so fascinating the history of all that. That the Ford versus Ferrari movie I thought was great, kind of
Yeah,
showcasing that. They did a really good job, kind of showing all. That was like one of the better car movies I had seen. And I remember during the pandemic we were walking, and my dad pointed out what was that car? It was like one of the cars. What was the son's name? It started with an E. I
that's
forget. Edsel, yeah, it was the Edsel, and there was a guy who had an Edsel, like an old Edsel, in like his garage. I was like, I've never seen this car. And he's like, oh, it was a total dud, but you could shift on the steering wheel, like back in the 50s. It was like the first steering wheel shifting car. I thought that was so interesting. And I was like, wow, these guys
within
are.
the last 5 to 7 years or something like that. My son and I went to Bass Player Live, and we're
Uh-huh.
driving to the airport on I guess the 405 or whatever it was, and
Yeah.
there was an Edsel on the road. I said, "Get a picture of that. Get a picture."
Nice. So somebody was actually driving it. It was like still wow, yeah, because there wasn't a ton made. It was like
Probably worth a
it was
lot of
only
money.
yeah, or yeah, it's interesting as how that works. Some of those cars just really appreciate some kind of stay the same. My dad had an old 49 Ford when I was a kid that he'd found in a woman's garage in the hill country. And he loved that car because it was like the first car I think Ford Motors started making after World War II that was mass produced. Because I
You
think
mean he
they.
stole it? He found it in a woman's garage? What do you?
Oh yeah, well it was this older woman. She only used it to drive to the grocery store or something. He saw it in a parking lot. He said, "Would you want to sell it?" and it was like a great deal. This was in the mid '80s, and so he had it when I was a kid, and he ended up selling it because it just wasn't getting driven enough. And but it was a neat old car, and I think he sold it to a guy that liked to collect. And I mean, that's, you have to have money and space for those kind of things. They're not. It's not a to be a car collector. You need to, or in good weather too, right? You need, like, California is perfect because you
Yeah.
can. Yeah.
Well, Marcos, I feel like I could just talk to you all day about that and the other, but
I know. Thank you. Appreciate
let's
it.
get
You too.
to base. Congratulations again on the grant, as well as all your other successes. And you're probably so consumed and immersed in this big project, but I'm sure there's going to be more stuff happening afterwards. Maybe it's even in the back of your mind somewhere now. I don't know, but we'll leave that for a follow-up interview. And
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, we'll pick up where we left off, I'm sure. Yeah. Right now it's really, this big creative capital project, and my sideman work, and still this new kind of teaching life I've dove into as well. So yeah, it's a lot on my plate at the moment, but I'm enjoying the ride, and we'll love to, stay in touch and let you know.
well, please do, and I look forward to seeing you again in person one of these days.
Yes,
Oh,
I'm
we saw each
looking.
other at the NAM show, so I'm probably going to go again this year. My wife's already asked me, "Are you going to NAM? Are we going to NAM? Are we going to California in January?" Was a big.
Yeah, yeah. Get out of the winter. Yeah, I think I'll be there too. I'm looking forward to that. I'm pretty sure that will probably be around the time I'll have to be in San Francisco afterwards for that residency. So probably going to look into combine the two trips.
All right. Well, I'm sure I'll run into you at the NS Design booth.
Yes, perfect.
All
We'll
right.
love to see you there.
Take care, my friend. Thanks again, and once again, congratulations. Well deserved.
Thank you so much, Mr. Liebman. I'll see you soon.
All right. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. If you've ever wanted to learn bass, but you thought maybe you're too old or your body just giving you some pushback here, you should know that right now there are thousands of people inside the For Bass Players Only community. They are of the silver aged vintage, shall we say, many of them, but they are learning bass. They're having the time of their life, and they're playing music that they love, something that they've always wanted to do, just like you, I have a feeling. You should come join them and experience that incredible transformation for yourself. For BassPlayersOnly.com. As I always say, you're never too old to groove. Thanks to my special guest, Marcos Varela. I will see you right back here next week, same time, same place, right here at ForBassPlayersOnly.com. In the meantime, I'm John Liebman. Let's play bass.